Welcome to the SnoHOMish Storytellers. Here in our little corner of the universe in SnoHOMish, we have a strong sense of community and heritage founded in the whispers of yesterday's stories and the narrative of what is being written today. SnoHOMish Storytellers captures this through organic conversation between SnoHOMies, former, present, and future.
This podcast is brought to you by the historic Downtown SnoHOMish Association. Our mission is to promote, preserve, and improve the Downtown Historic District as the heart and soul of the city of SnoHOMish. My name is Megan Hetherington, Executive Director of HDSA, and my lovely co-host is
Sheila DeVerter, board member of HDSA. And with us today is also our podcast producer and vice president of HDSA, Trent DeVerter.
And welcome to our podcast.
Happy New Year, Megan. We modified the intro just for the new year.
That's right. It was assigned.
Yeah.
Instead of it just happening.
But start of a new year. It is exciting. A blank canvas, right? So many new things I feel like that are popping up around the SnoHOMish area.
Yeah.
Like new businesses coming into town. And also our guest tonight, let's just jump right into it, is a newer refresher of the SnoHOMish Historical Society, right?
Yeah.
So we have Laura with us tonight. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Laura, do you say Knutson or do you say Knutson?
It's Knutson. You pronounce the K. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, most people don't, but you're supposed to pronounce the K.
That's a good distinction. I wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
It's very Scandinavian.
Knutson.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us tonight
Thanks for having me.
on this chilly, cold,
But cozy.
dreary.
Very cozy,
It is
yes.
cozy here. Even the dog has a sweater on.
Right.
So yeah, thank you for being here. And we want to just kind of dive into how did you land yourself as the new president, right?
Yeah. Actually, officially now that we're in the new year.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
It is very exciting. Yeah. You know, it's funny. I grew up in SnoHOMish, lived here my whole life, and went to college down in Oregon, and then came back and just 3 years ago bought my house in SnoHOMish. So I got to come home, you know, where my whole family is.
Yeah.
And a few years before I bought my house, my older brother bought his historic house. And it was about that time he started to get involved in the SnoHOMish Historical Society and the Old Homes group and everything.
Oh, cool.
And kind of started to bring me in a little bit. And I found myself just attending meetings. And then when I bought my house and started to do some of the research to find the original owner, you know, I found myself talking to the former president of the Historical Society more. And then I you know, one thing led to another, and all of a sudden I'm designing a walking tour brochure for the Historical Society because I've got some graphic design skills. And you just kind of get sucked in. And,
That's how it usually goes, right, Megan?
I didn't suck you into anything. I don't know what you're talking about.
Did you come into SnoHOMish like with the thought of, hey, I want to get a historical house? Or did it just like happen that that was what was available and caught your heart?
both. No, the dream was always to move back to SnoHOMish, to be close to my family. We love it here. We always want to be here. I didn't think at my age, I'm 32, I just turned 32. I did not think I would be lucky enough to get to buy a historic home in SnoHOMish. And so, you know, I had this dream, I'll get a little 1-2 bedroom, you know, a house in town if I'm lucky. And it was, 2020 in the pandemic. And I was living in Linwood with my grandpa. And he got pneumonia and had passed away that year.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And yeah. And so I was, you know, kind of in the spot in life where, what am I going to do next? Where am I going to live? I don't want to go to an apartment. You know, I don't know if I'm ready to buy a house. And I was just kind of laying on the couch one day and, you know, trying to figure out what I was going to do. And my sister-in-law sent me the listing for the house. And I had just landed a new job. You know, I was like a month into my new job. And I'm like, oh, maybe this is affordable. Maybe I can do this. And it was like October 2020. And I sent it to my older brother. And 5 minutes later, his agents called me.
Oh, my
and
gosh.
an hour later, I was touring the house. And it all, you know, and then 24 hours later, I had a bid in. And it all happened incredibly fast.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful 1890 Italianate Victorian right in the heart of SnoHOMish. And it was just completely a dream come true. And, you know, in the middle of the pandemic, and the day I got the keys was November 25th. So it was the day before Thanksgiving, which was also my 29th birthday.
Oh, wow.
And my whole family came out. They were playing music. They had flowers out. that, my sister-in-law put together this little welcome home basket that we're all socially distanced. My little nephew's there. And the coolest thing when I went to look at this basket was there was the SnoHOMEish Tribune, and there was a little sticky tab in there. And so I take it, I open it up, and my older brother had put an announcement in the paper. And it said, Miss Laura Knudsen joins Big Brother Christopher with purchase of historic home at Tweaking Avenue A.
That's awesome.
So I cut it out and I have that framed in my house. And so it's documented forever that we're all home together in SnoHOMEish now.
So are you guys like neighbors?
He lives, so I'm on A and he lives on Avenue H. So and we're off kind of third. So we're about 7 blocks away. So
I thought you guys were like down the street because that would be really meant to be.
It kind of feels down, just down third. And his in-laws are the clinker brick house, on D the spooky kind of one that everyone knows about. And so we're all just kind of in this line.
I love it.
That is so funny.
And what a cool brother.
Oh, he's the best. Both of my brothers are like my absolute best friends. And
I love that.
Little brother, he's next. So we need to get him an old house in town. And my mom also desperately wants to have an old house in town. And so
you guys should just have every letter. Like
spaced
out in a row.
Yeah. So we're keeping an eye out for little brother, but it's really nice having him home. It's a pretty decent sized house, so it was a lot for me to take on, by myself, and so it's nice having him there for sure.
That's awesome. So how did he get involved into the Historical Society?
My oldest brother, he just kind of started contacting people. he does that sort of thing, and just joined the Old Homes group, I think, which is quite a big group of folks. And a lot of them used to be in the Historical Society back in the day. And so you go to one event and you just start talking to the most interesting people you've ever talked to. And they introduce you to this person and they introduce you to that person. And then you're in meetings and just even living like on Avenue A on my street. I have the most incredible neighbors and they've all lived there for 30 years. And my next door neighbor used to be the president of the Historical Society, a handful of years ago. And so it's a much more connected town, I think, than I even realized, even though I grew up here.
Right.
Yeah. Connecting as an adult is a little different than connecting when you're a kid. You just you live here and you take it. I mean, I didn't grow up here, but I feel like wherever you live, you just kind of take it for granted that that's just the way that it is. You don't know if it's special or unique or not. It just is, right?
Yeah. Until you've gone away and then you can see and be like, oh, home is home.
Oh, and it's interesting how many people come back to SnoHOMEish because they experience something else. And then they're like, oh, wait, like there is something special about that place. I kind of want to go back there,
Exactly.
Yeah. So as far as the Historical Society, it sounds like your initial interest was through your home. You have this historical home that you wanted to get more information about. Like you said, started meeting people, going to different meetings and whatnot. But I mean, now you're the president. How did that happen?
So this past year, I think it was a couple of years ago, we kind of started talking about the walking tour brochure. And so, I've met a lot of people and would go to the events. About a year ago, I was on the parlor tour. So I had my house on the parlor tour and that was really fun. And then this past summer, a spot on the board opened up. And so Chris Gee, the president of the Historical Society last year, he asked if I would be on it. And I was like, yeah, sure, not a problem. And so I came on and just kind of started surveying just the current state of things. And, we had just been coming out of a pandemic, really. And so trying to kickstart events again and get organized and get the museum open to the public. We were still kind of figuring that out, because just, this time last year, people were still wearing masks, we didn't have the museum open. And so I was kind of looking at that and then realizing, hey, we really need better information out there to the public about what we're doing, what we're here for, what the services are that we offer. And I think the best way to do that was a website. And so I started kind of working on that. And just through that process, I'm texting Chris every day, and we're talking on the phone a lot and I'm in the museum a lot. And, he had been doing it for, I want to say around 14 years. And he really grew up in this society and his parents were heavily involved and he's been giving tours since he was a teen. And so he's really, really plugged in. And so I spent the, last half of this year just listening to all of his stories and all of the anecdotes that he has about people who moved here in the beginning, all the early settlers, and then people in the last 50 years or so. And it was so fascinating to me. And I just kind of realized how important it is to preserve that history for future generations. And, I think they really wanted to bring kind of a younger crowd in and get some energy in there. And he kind of floated the idea of okay, so you'll be taking over as president, right? And I was like, oh, okay.
That's a version of a secession
What does
plan.
that look like? What does that mean? And Yeah, it's been really exciting. We've launched the website just, about a month or so ago and printed our new walking tour brochure and starting to kind of look at, doing some more organization, cataloging of the house and looking at the events for the upcoming year. So
That's awesome.
I have my hands full, but we have a great board. We have some board members returning and a lot of new people. And I think it's going to be really, really exciting year.
Wow. That is a lot to start all of that again. I think we felt it a little bit even with HDSA after the pandemic, right? Of us just figuring out, oh, what all do we need to do? So totally understand how big of a task that is.
Yeah.
And for you to lead it with your energy, I am so excited to see what all, the Historical Society is going to do. Because every time I walk by like the Blackmans, I've never been inside the Blackmans Museum.
Yeah, oh, it's incredible.
Or the Waltz House either. And, I would see the little pagoda and I was like, oh, I wonder what's inside. So I can't wait until you guys actually have like doors open and, the public can just walk through because I would love to see what's in it. I've heard stories from the outside.
It's perfectly preserved. It is literally like stepping into a Victorian era
time
house.
capsule.
It's
so cool.
beautiful. It's, and I think it's really important to have a museum like that, like that's in an actual historic house, like especially in a place like SnoHOMEish where there's so many historic houses in town and a lot of which are, pretty well preserved, to let other people come into town and get to have that experience. And like this is what it was like, I think really puts you back kind of in those early days of SnoHOMEish, which is really, really neat. So yeah, we're excited to have some people come through and kind of start up the tours again and whatnot.
Were you always interested in history prior to this? Or was this like a newer passion that is coming?
I've always kind of been interested in it. I grew up here and I remember as a kid, my mom would take me on all the parlor tours and the home tours. And I don't really know when it started. My mom's always loved old houses. She's always been into antiques. We have a lot of family antique furniture, just beautiful pieces. And I grew up in this house with all of these really meaningful, pieces of furniture and books and everything. And so, yeah, we used to go on the parlor tours and I was like, oh, man, old houses are so cool. And at some point along the way, I was like, oh, I really want to, live here forever, but I want to live in an old house in town. And it's kind of wild that, my oldest brother, so he lives in the 1888 J.S. White house. So J.S. White was the town architect, built the Marx building, a lot of the buildings in town and a lot of the houses in town. Maybe my house. I don't know. I'm still researching that. And so when he moved in there, Warner Blake, the town historian, wrote a book and my brother's house is on the cover of that. So
that's what the name was familiar.
Yeah.
Warner Blake's book. I think I saw not an ad, but, like promoting his new book or something. And
with the J.S. White on
yeah,
there.
with the J.S. White.
Yeah,
name.
Taylor's
that's
talked
my
about
brother's
too.
house. So
That's awesome.
So yeah, when he bought that, we kind of, that's when I think the moment we started to get more into like the town history. Like you kind of, know about the Blackmans and, the Fergusons and stuff just growing up here, but starting to really kind of dive into it and read the river reflection books and whatnot really kind of got us interested and down this rabbit hole, researching my old house. It took about, I think the last 2 years I've spent researching, trying to find the original owner. It was quite the process. It's not usually like that for most people. You can usually look up the census data and that's, maybe enough. But I was going to public records at the county records and looking through microfilm. Like I'd have to put the film on and I was trying to find the deed. And it was, oh God, it was this whole process. It took forever, but extremely rewarding this past year when I found out what the name is. So I've ordered my plaque. I'm ready to get my plaque. I'm ready to put it on my house and I might invite my neighbors and do a little, have a little curtain and, so.
I love that.
That would be really adorable.
So speaking about that, one thing that I realized shortly into when I started this job, which I've been in it for 18 months, something like that. We would get a lot of emails that were like, I have this historic home. What can you tell me about it? And I want to get a plaque. How can I get one?
Yeah.
And I'd be like, I don't know. And so at that time, reaching out to the Historical Society was a little bit tough.
Yeah.
So now that we have like Sheila said, new energy, and I'm sure you're establishing processes and finding all these things that, need to be addressed. What is the best way for if somebody is new here, they buy a historical home or they're even renting a historical home and they just want to know a little bit more about it without being like the expectation that you're just going to provide it all for them.
Right.
Easy peasy.
Because it could take 2 years, let me tell you.
What's like the best, how would you advise somebody on that?
Yeah. So, I'm actually kind of working on a sheet right now that is just kind of a guide with a bunch of links and here's where to start and what the process is. because, when I started, there was nothing on the Historical Society website. This is before I built the website. And I'm just going off of tidbits that my neighbors told me. I had an excellent neighbor who went to the Northwest Room at the Everett Library and looked through the Polk directories for me, and you kind of like have your starting place, whether it's Ancestry or whatnot. And you go from there, and it's this whole puzzle piece. But boy, did I wish I had like a whole list of all of the websites and where do I do the public records request and what's the site for that. So right now, you can go to the SnoHOMish Historical Society website, and we have some information on our archive room. So that's, one of the places you can start. We get a lot of emails that I've been fielding, more than I realized, of people wanting to research their old house, and they reach out to us. So we respond to them, get them started. You can, if you do know the owner, the plaque request is now online. So you can fill that out, make your payment online. Within a week of the website going live, we had somebody do that. So it's needed.
Yeah.
People are...
The plaque is from you guys. It's from the Historical Society or from the city?
We have like a contractor we go through. So we just kind of manage that process. And so people, what you would do is, once you have all of your information and you fill out this application, you kind of got to prove, that this is the original owner. Here are my sources. And we kind of look over that, and we might have some questions.
Gotcha.
And then we'll go, get that sign ordered and give it to them. But in terms of, all of the different resources, I'm actually in contact with one of the librarians at the SnoHOMish Library, and kind of in early stages of thinking through like a workshop to put together, free event for people, and
that's a great idea.
Hand out that resource of, you can make a public records request with the city. You can come to the archive room. You can go to county records and look at the microfilm. Polk directories. What are the Polk directories? What are the Sanborn maps? And did you know that the 1888 Sanborn map in SnoHOMish is mislabeled on the street? There are so many places you can go to start piecing together your house's history. But there's a lot of nuance there, like it was it the 1900 census burned up in a 1921 fire. So there's nothing in SnoHOMish for it, so for that particular year. And I want to put this together because I want everyone to have like an enjoyable experience researching their old house and have all the resources at their fingertips. So.
Yeah. I think that would be really cool. That's such an adventure that you can, like you said, the rabbit hole to go down, you know, not just who built it. Because I feel like we've talked on the podcast a lot about whenever we talk about history, people always jump to the beginnings of SnoHOMish, the 1800s, the whatever. Right. But like also when you're tracing back like census data or like the ancestry, you're stopping through different points of time. And that's so cool that you're creating this whole timeline for your house.
I have I think a 16-page Word document from basically 1890 till present day of all of the owners. So my house was a rental for about 60 years. It's zoned as a duplex. So there's a lot of people that have come through. I'm merely a steward of history. I'm just one owner in a very long list of owners, and it's such a privilege. No, it was very cool. I think I started about 1940, and then you work backwards, and of course, like it was the most difficult process for my house. I understand why nobody had ever done it because, they didn't answer the door in the census. Some of the Sanborn maps were mislabeled. If you go back far enough, my house is 1890s. They weren't labeling streets. It wasn't 218 at that time. It was just Avenue A between 2nd and 3rd. And so, my neighbors have plaques. So you do the process of elimination. And I could go on all day. But I had found a kind of a clue. And it wasn't till I had found an 1890 ledger that all the names kind of clicked in the deeds handing off. And so I was, at 28 years old, the day I got the keys to my house, a single woman, bought my house on my own. And this year I discovered that my house was bought by Mary A. Gifford, a woman. I will have a woman's name on the plaque.
Oh my gosh,
not very many plaques in SnoHOMish have just a woman's name. So it felt very meant to be.
Yeah, resonated, right?
Yeah.
Oh man,
it's very, very rewarding.
That's
cool.
really cool. I like that. And that's interesting too, because as you were talking about like, what the process would be and how you research your home, like there's so many misconceptions. Like as someone who, like I live in an old home, our home was built in 1926. And we moved here in 2015, and we were told so many things by people that live in SnoHOMish that I just took for a fact. I'm like, oh, okay. And it wasn't until I was in this job talking to different people that I started realizing, oh, that's not the way that it is. So like one example is you can't get a plaque for your house unless your house is like on some sort of registry. And then I found out that registry doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
And then there was like, you can't change anything in your house if you are in that registry without getting permission by the city or the historical society or some sort of, nobody knew, but just someone, whoever quote unquote they was, they have to tell you that you can or cannot do this thing. And I found out that's not true either. That there's kind of like a general understanding that like, yes, if you own a historic home, please be a good steward of it. And don't like, you know, turn it into something totally crazy. But there's no rule really that says you can or cannot, or you won't get your permit. You know, that doesn't actually exist. So now I'm like, well, I want a plaque for my house. Like I want to see who owned my house. And
what year was it?
1926.
Yeah. So I think I want to say the cutoff date's around in the 30s or 40s or something. So your house is old enough to get a plaque. Absolutely.
Yeah. See,
if you
I feel
live
so left out for no reason.
But there is a cutoff date.
Yeah. And that's just, I think, the historical society. As far as like living in town, like I'm technically in the historic district. And I want to say it's like, is it like 1st to 5th and A to
Something,
D or
yeah.
something?
That was
somewhere
another
in
thing.
there.
Someone told us that we weren't, but we're on E between 1st and 2nd.
You
so
might
is it like because we're across 2nd? Like I don't know. You know,
I joke with my brother all the time that you're on that side of town. But no, it's funny because I've been told all sorts of things too that I'll have to replace my 135 or however old is my windows frames at some point because they're wood. And I want to do it anyways, just to, maintain the look of the house, but it has to be replaced with wood, which are much more expensive, harder to have custom made. But yeah, it's interesting. So during my process of researching my old house, and doing the public records request, I found all of these permits and stuff. And I found a very silly email chain, I think with the city, where the owner at the time wanted to plant these, I call them my Dr. Seuss trees. They're as tall as my house. My house is extremely tall. I have 10-foot ceilings and 2 stories. And the city basically said no. And then he planted them anyways. and then nobody said anything, And I have these beautiful trees that everyone comments on as they walk by. And so there maybe are some hard rules, but it's also kind of like, they want you to stay true to the time period, but there's, I assume, some flexibility.
I mean, I definitely understand it. Like in the historic business district, right? There's the design review board to make sure that everyone's keeping, appropriate facades on the downtown. And I can totally see the same, similar things in the historical houses district to make sure that, someone doesn't come in and just like bulldoze a nice Victorian entrance and put in, like sheet metal.
Or start an illegal lawnmower repair shop out of my carriage shed. Yeah, I found that email chain too.
Oh my God.
The city, they did shut that down.
Yeah. But at the same time, I can see how providing flexibility could actually encourage folks to maintain their houses, right? Because, for example, like with the wood windows, right? If the people living there were like, hey, I can't afford wood windows, but I don't want the house to be moldy because the draft and the cold and the moisture, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, yeah, probably a very fine line between letting people do stuff and not letting people do stuff.
Well, and I found out that's not actually a thing.
It's interesting because as a historic homeowner, I find myself kind of, trying to balance, maintaining the integrity of this 1890 home, but also living in a functional space, that makes sense for me. And I'll be honest, I don't have a dishwasher in my house, and that's working for me right now as a single woman. But one day I'd like that, and my washer dryer in my kitchen and things like that.
Very European.
I have my cupboards are beautiful. I have these. They're probably the first cupboards and only cupboards ever put in the kitchen, 1930s, 1940s,
cool.
and I love them, but. I'm barely 5'3", and
they're way high.
I hope to have kids one day, and I'm starting to think through like the functionality of that.
Right.
It'll break my heart, to remodel my kitchen, but need a functional space too. So it's a lot of my neighbors, and just people in the old homes group I've talked to. It's you try very hard to kind of restore it, but also have this space that we're living in every day.
Right, right.
Our house has. Some previous owner redid the kitchen. So like our kitchen is newer with newer cabinets and stuff, but the original cabinets from the kitchen were put into the laundry room.
Yeah.
And they're
that
super
happens
cool.
a lot.
I like them.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
I don't think I'd take them out, So that was a cool way to repurpose.
Thinking about that, I would like to have a greenhouse in my backyard one day or something. I'm like, okay, how can I repurpose these cupboards? And I have because it was a duplex, I have a kitchen upstairs with the same cupboards. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'll only take them out of one and then I won't feel so guilty.
Right.
And so,
or even just keeping the bottoms, but maybe
the bottoms,
newer
so,
uppers so that it can be at the height that is
Exactly.
functional for you.
That's so cool, though.
SnoHOMish Storytellers is supported by Elle Marie Hair Studios.
Sheila?
Yes, Megan.
I was trying to grocery shop for my family.
Yeah.
Not one of my favorite things to do.
It's tough.
It's time consuming. You have to meal plan and all the things. It's never just like grocery shopping.
Yeah.
And then at the end of it, you see how much it stinking costs. Everything is so expensive right now. I can't handle it. And it makes it really hard to run your house on a budget, and you have to prioritize all the things that are needs. And but every now and then, like, you just need to take care of yourself.
Right.
And you have to kind of get creative with the way that you spend your money. But I feel like if we're never, especially as moms, busy moms, if we're never taking some time to put our hard-earned money back into ourselves, we just get burnt out.
Right.
So one thing that I really love about Elle Marie Hair Studio is they're able to work with all budgets. So if you need to just feel pampered, feel loved, make yourself look great again,
right,
they have options for you to do that because they have varying price points based on different levels of hairstylists at each location. And they always have some sort of seasonal promotion. So even if you can, get an extra good deal on a variety of services, so it's not just one thing, like just a haircut or just color today, you can actually get the whole package and feel really good when you leave their studio that day.
Right. You really got to make sure you take time to recharge yourself, to take care of yourself.
Yes.
And, as you busy moms and other busy people out there, it's not always convenient time-wise to go to a hair salon. And that is also why we love Elle Marie Hair Studio, because they have 5 locations from Mill Creek, Alderwood, Woodinville, Smoky Point, Arlington, and of course, up here in SnoHOMish. So there is really no excuse to not take care of yourself or your family and take that little piece of that budget, to make sure you feel good about yourself. And don't forget that if you mention HDSA, you will enjoy a special offer of $10 off a haircut and $20 of a color for a total of $30 in savings from your hair.
Awesome.
So there's really no excuse to take care of yourself. Take a moment.
Yes.
Put some of that budget
Take
for
this
yourself.
ad as the time. This is for you. If you've been thinking about it, you need to go do it.
Yes. For more information and to book your next appointment, you can go to elmariehairstudio.com. That's ELLEMARIE hairstudio.com.
So cool. I love that you were basically like enchanted by your old home, and that got you interested enough to get involved in the Historical Society. So outside of old homes, like the Historical Society has quite a bit of responsibility and expansion as far as the whole history of SnoHOMish. This is the place that people want to go, as in your organization, to find things out. So where are you at with that as far as like your vision for the organization? What you found to be lacking? What is what's your first quarter plan?
I think, my first quarter plan was originally to launch the website and we've done that.
Good job.
Yeah.
Congrats.
And it looks great.
Yeah. I think, it's kind of 1.0. I think for me, like when I first stepped in, I was like, okay, information. We got to get information out there. As a former journalist, like that is so important to me. Like, and just meeting people in the old homes group. So many people were asking me questions, how do I get my plaque? My mom and I were out on a walk one day and struck up a conversation with Lady Gardening and she wanted a plaque. And so, I had to like go home, print out the application, stick it in her mailbox with a sticky note of my address, to stick it back. And this, was before the website.
Step number 1, create a form online for the plaque.
Yeah. Number 1, get the online, and make sure our phone numbers and our address and just transparency. Who's on the board? Who runs the society? How many people are there?
Right.
That was kind of step 1. We're starting to talk about social media. Just being a little more approachable to kind of the millennial generation, because one day some of these people aren't going to be here anymore. And I really, right now, I'm by far the youngest person, probably the youngest president they've had. And I want other people my age to want to come do this, and I kind of want it to be really obvious, like how people can plug in. And so we're kind of starting to generate our list of docents, and those change every year, people that volunteer. We get kids from the high school that come and intern and whatnot.
Cool.
And there's a lot going on. I think a lot of it has been in Chris's head for so long. He's, it's a big responsibility and he's been running it all. And so I think, I'm kind of in this next phase of documenting everything.
Right.
Members, can they pay their dues online? Like, how are we making this accessible for everybody?
And I didn't know you had membership.
Yeah.
So like,
I didn't either.
this is exactly the sort of things you're saying. I'm like, this is great because it's all the things it's like, I think the general public didn't know or doesn't know that you do this unless they like are really forward and go and be like, how can I get involved? And like, give me the information.
Here for so long, but if you haven't lived here, like I found a member list from like 2009 and it's like, okay, like what, I didn't realize till recently, like our members, it kind of renews every year. But we didn't have anything digital. Nothing was digitalized. So like, how can you digitally renew your membership? And it's a lot for one person or even a couple people to be reaching out to this whole list of people. Right. And so we're kind of talking through that now, just our general membership, our senior membership, and looking through like what more can we give to people, and so there's some things you're privy to, like, well, we say, free access to the museum, but right now it's kind of free to everyone. It's kind of on a donation basis, and there's about 3 general meetings a year that our members are kind of invited to come to. And we try to get people to come talk, get some interesting speakers to kind of provide to our members to come talk about maybe old home restoration or, things like that, or how to research your old house, things like that. And so trying to kind of get that up and going again and just really, at the end of the day, this is a public service. That's how I think about it. This is a volunteer nonprofit organization, and we need to be a resource to the public. And so kind of stepping into today, like where are we at? I think we really need to digitalize things, make it accessible, and get the word out there, about these events we do. Like I grew up here. I know that we have the parlor tour, but I can't tell you how many people came through this year on the parlor tour. Oh, I've never done this. I didn't know you guys did this in SnoHOMEish. And so I think, communication is kind of next phase I want to go into. And then my mom and I are starting to look through the house, and it's a decent sized house. There is a lot of stuff in there.
The museum house?
The museum. Yes, the Blackman Museum. And some of it's cataloged. Some of our archive room is digitalized, but like trying to get caught up with, where are those CDs? Can we put it in the cloud? And then some of these are new concepts to the board, right? Yeah, what is the cloud, right?
Cloud.
Yeah. So I think digitalizing the archive room is like huge goal, but
project,
a massive undertaking.
But that would be awesome, right? Because then if you have that database that you can just give a link to someone and then they can do their own Googling.
Or even finding like, cool photos or to have artwork in your office.
There's so many there. That was one of the clues of my old house. There was an 1895 legend. I'm literally holding this 1895 book in my hands, and I'm seeing like my lot and block number, and it's just that it's a great room. We've got a file cabinet full of files on most of the old houses in town. That's where I started, actually, and there was not a file on my house, but I'm about to slip it in there. It's very, very rewarding.
It's like it's always been there all along.
Yeah. But just a lot of photo albums, a lot of old photos, and so right now it's you can come view it all, and it's by appointment. Yes, it's on our website. It's call the number, make an appointment. We're extremely flexible. We'll try to get down there whenever is a good time, for the person who wants to come. But it's hard to keep these things open. You're right. We're all volunteers.
Yeah.
Most of us have full-time jobs, and so I think digitalizing that and making it available, on the web is going to be huge, for coming generations, especially. So we're starting to talk about that and repairs to the house, cataloging some of the inventory. Chris Gee, he has got stories on every inch of that house. And so trying to extract that information and write it down, like that's, kind of the next thing.
It's like we just need to videotape him walking through the house.
Exactly. No, I'll have hour-long conversations with him. He'll tell me a million stories. He's one of the most fascinating people I know. And I'm just taking notes in my phone. Like, God, it's just like, somebody's got to document this, you know, document everything. So.
And what about the Waltz building? Because that is one of the spaces that I, as an event planner in town, have always been like, ooh, what's in it? How big is it? How many people does it fit? And I saw someone posted on, I think it's the SnoHOMEish Facebook page or something, that they're doing a like knitting and crocheting session in the Waltz building. And I was like, wait, I want to go. I didn't know it was open. So like, what's the deal with the Waltz building now?
Yeah. So I want to say we just celebrated about 40 years of having the Waltz building. So it was a building
as an event place or just in general?
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure, when they moved it, I'm not sure exactly what they're using for. I think just kind of an extra kind of staging
moved
place.
it.
So it sat on the SnoHOMEish High School campus. And
wait, they moved an entire house.
Krisky sat on the roof and with a big stick lifted the power lines to make this was,
oh my god,
back in the day when things weren't as
OSHA.
Yeah, and
that's
they moved
insane.
it. And I want to say they were kind of auctioning it off. What's the address there? 216 or something. They paid they paid the amount of money that is the address of the house, of the building. And so it sits right next door to the Blackman Museum. It is our event space that we lease out. It is incredibly affordable compared to every other event space. And it gets booked up. People, they do parties, they do wedding receptions. There's AA groups that meet there. There's the knitting club that meets there. And Sonia, she's on the board of our historical society. She's been kind of managing that for years and she's excellent at it. And so, and she'll work with you to find a reasonable price. We don't like to turn people away. And so, it's a great space. It seats quite a bit of people. It's a beautiful building too. And we provide tables if needed and can help with the catering, all of that sort of stuff. So
how do you go about booking it?
Call the number online. Sonia manages kind of that schedule and whatnot. And so, and I see emails come in. You can email or call us and Sonia gets back to everybody right away. And
there you go, Sheila. Awesome. Were you thinking about that for wine walks?
Yeah. Or for other events and just things around town, because it's such prime location too. You're not right on First, and so you're not in the shopping crowd, but you're just
still in the heart of town.
Exactly. I love it.
And it's beautiful. There's pretty gazebo outside. In the spring especially, it's really, really pretty.
Flowers and all that. I know SnoHOMEish is really pretty when the flowers are blooming.
I know. It's now is the worst time to be picturing anything anywhere because it's just not even in SnoHOMEish, just in general. But I appreciate that you guys are streamlining everything.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've been talking about communication, and that's one thing that I had a hard time with HDSA when I started is as a resident and somebody who knew HDSA existed, I couldn't say what we do. And then once I was, getting involved and realizing, okay, this is what's going on. Right. This is the work that's happening. It's not like they're not doing anything. Right. But that can be the feel, right? People, that can be the assumed message. Is it because I'm not receiving information, nothing's going on,
Right. And just having those platforms, the SnoHOMEish Historical Society was started in 69. So it's been around for a long time. And we've been doing walking tours since the beginning and the house tours at the museum. But I grew up here and so I, was pretty aware of kind of the services offered, but it wasn't until recently that we offer scholarships just every year. We do a scholarship and high school kids can put in their applications and we pick one. It was, I think, around $1,000 or so.
Wow. That's great.
We just did the Mary Olson Awards. So, a handful of a couple businesses and then a couple houses in town received awards for just their, substantial restoration work that they did on their, property. And so there's a lot going on. Mm-hmm. It's just making sure the public is aware. And part of that is just setting up the platforms to be able to do that, working with the Tribune and working with other, websites where we can kind of broadcast our events that we're doing. And
so if people want to get involved into the Historical Society, if maybe they're just learning about it or now they're, re-energized with your new leadership in it, are you guys looking for board members, volunteers, or how can they get involved?
Volunteers for sure. So we just had our elections. So the board is set, and sometimes there's turnover throughout the year, but you can email us, you can call us if you want to volunteer, if you want to be a member, if you want to do both. The day of the parlor tour, we had someone come through that was just in awe. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is right up my alley. How do I get involved? And so we got his number and now we're in touch. And
That's great.
And it's kind of, and the way it was explained to me when I got involved is it's as much as you want, it's what you want it to be. And if you're interested in the archives, and in the research, we can get you plugged in there. If you just want to sit and talk to people, come be a docent, come sit and while the house is, while the museum's open and answer questions, and you can talk to people about the history and whatnot. If you want to do walking tours, if you want to get out in the city, come do the walking tours of the old houses or the businesses. And so it's kind of, it's on a volunteer basis, and it's really kind of where you want to get plugged in. And we, have we have a lot to do. If you, we had somebody come by and they just like gardening, and we're like, great, and, we're a nonprofit. So if you want to come volunteer your time to do some weeding, like we're super happy to have you. And so really anything, there's a lot of opportunities.
No, that's awesome. I think that's good for everyone to know that, here's an opportunity to get plugged in and do something for the betterment of the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably learn some stuff for along the way.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
You'll hear some stories, that's for sure. And I think that's been probably my favorite thing about just being involved is, I grew up, I know a lot of the history about early Snohomish and the early settlers, but it's everything that was happening in like the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. I was
the mall proposal.
The furniture place just down the street, that was a car dealership. And I had somebody came through on the parlor tour, was telling me that he remembers. And I was in my house one day, and this happens a lot where people will walk by and take photos, of our houses on Avenue A. And somebody was out there admiring my monkey tree. And so I went out and started talking to them, and Mr. Ewing was leading this, I think it was maybe the tree walking tour that they do.
Yeah. I've done that. It's fun.
He was a biologist at UW. Like I knew who he was immediately. And he starts telling me, I used to live in, Jan and John's house next door to your house. And I'm like, no way. And he starts telling me about the old firehouse just down there on the corner of 2nd and A.
Right.
And he remembers when it was in use. And this would have been, late 80s. So I was born in 91. So kind of before my family had moved to Snohomish. And he's telling me about, that alarm would go off at night, and Mr. Walsh across the street, you would hear the screen door slam, and he'd run down the street, put his overalls on, and, because it was a volunteer fire.
Oh my gosh.
All I have to do is walk out my door, and you meet somebody who's been here, who, grew up here, who knows about the history. And it's those anecdotal stories that how do we capture that time period? Right. We've got everything documented, the early settlers, but like, what do we do with all this time that has happened since?
I'm so glad to hear you say that. Like one of my favorite episodes that we did was with Mac Bates.
You say that all the time.
I know, he was just the best. But he talked about, what it was like to grow up here. And he mainly was talking about like the 60s, the 70s, and those are the stories that you don't hear as much.
Exactly.
And I'm afraid that we're going to lose them if they're not captured and documented in some way. And then furthermore, like, what are we doing now? Like, how is that being captured? For like you're always writing history, and you're leaving some sort of legacy behind. And if it's not documented, then it didn't happen. So
we've got this fascination with the Victorian era. That's when all of our houses in town, were built. But what about everything since? What about the mall? And
what about the 20s? What about the 50s? What happened then?
And so I think there's this generation, the board members, it's kind of phasing out now that were here when the society started. And I think, one of the projects we're talking about doing this year is going and sitting down with some folks, who grew up here, been here for, decades and doing some kind of audio interviews, like recordings to have as part of our archive room. And we're kind of thinking through how to do that. And it's something we've done before, but definitely something that's just becoming increasingly important, I think. And, right now I'm just, in awe of the Victorian. That's kind of what my focus has been. But a couple generations from now, they're going to be really interested in, what happened in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and even 90s. And so we want to start thinking about, how we're capturing those. And, one thing that the Historical Society did about the time it was founded was make these river reflection books. And there are a lot of just quotes in them of anecdotal stories of the people that remember when Pilchuck Julia would go and sit in somebody's yard crisscross and wait till they brought her a treat, just like stories that you won't really find in history books, and like textbooks. But I think it'd be interesting to do that, just to get these anecdotal blurbs, from current residents and maybe put together another book in the future. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be really cool. We hear little stories like that all the time with the downtown district of like, oh, I remember when that store was this or when that store was that. And it used to be this restaurant or that shop, or JCPenney was down here and Safeway was here on, First Street. And but even just like, I am a horrible eavesdropper. Like, I just can't help it. But it's like when I'm walking down the street in Snohomish pretty much every day, there's residents and tourists who they are always commenting on what is new and what has changed. And I think probably every day I will hear somebody say something about, oh, that used to be this or that is that now. And did you know that Lamb and Company is down here and they also own this and that? And
the
so
ice
like
cream
you're
shop and the thing,
I mean, one thing that we have to do as an organization that's like the stewards of downtown is like, we do need to document all of that. Like we need to say who came in, who left, like what changed, do we have vacancies, things like that. So like that is going to be in our own archives, but that's like starting now.
Yeah. But I mean, even in recent years, like I'm just thinking about capturing like the COVID time period and how downtown went through that. Like,
that's a historic thing.
Right. That is a very big historic milestone. Probably 20 years from now, we'll look back and be like, remember back in my day, we had restaurants sitting outside on the parking spots of the streets. And then all the like decals that all the stores put up of like SnoHOMish strong and, we'll make it through and things like that. Because now I think they're starting to take some of it down. So it's like, oh man, maybe we should have gotten more pictures of that so that 20 years from now, it can be in the Historical Society archive.
Well, yeah, I think that kind of visual part of it's really important in doing kind of like a look through time. Like that would be a fun project. Like just the other day, I was trying to find some old photo and I came across, well, it's Cat House Pizza now, but it was the Java Inn. And back when I was in high school, it was like this coffee shop. I loved it. I was all about it. And I completely, I graduated high school a little while ago now, but I had completely forgotten about it. And this was like pretty recent. And so I think I'm a big like fan of Excel spreadsheets and list making and databases. I work at Amazon, so very important, but it'd be interesting, I think, to kind of start documenting, what place was what and when did it change and
Well, like at some point we changed from the antique capital of the Northwest. Could anybody say like when that happened?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I have no idea. I just see it on the sign, when I drive into SnoHOMish from Highway 9. So
we still have a bunch of HDSA bags that are like, what is it? The vintage feeling or something. That was a
dig our vintage attitude or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. That was a phase, right? But even each time like a building gets painted, like when the SnoHOMish Mall building turned beige, I think I was like, oh man, I remember back when it was like yellow and orange.
Oh, Edit.
No. Where the vault is, the salon.
Oh yeah.
But
where the creamery, like where the creamery was.
Exactly.
Like, this is a strip already. It's like they didn't leave; they're still here, but they moved.
But yeah, when Edit painted from the old bank facade to white, right? That was a huge shift in the way that our downtown looks.
Well, it's so funny because so many photographers are like, I wish they had never painted that building. I'm like, I really like it white, but I guess it was like a statement place.
If you lived here. I remember when, I went to college, down in Oregon for about 5 years and came back and I'm like, what is this billboard on the edge of town? I guess it was like a huge controversial thing, just putting even one billboard up. But I came back and I remember talking to my mom. Oh my God, there's like 4 more lights in town that I got to sit at now. Like I remember as a kid, you just drive through. So
interesting to reflect on those sorts of things, right? Like it's little changes that happen over time that you just kind of digest, but that when you look back, it's like, oh my gosh, they used to be different.
But it really is. History is every day. Like every passing moment turns into history. And as much as we love and romanticize a lot of the Victorian era, the late 1800s, it is important for today too. So it's a continuous effort.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome.
So as we're talking about all these things we love about SnoHOMish, we always end our podcast by asking our guest to describe your perfect day in downtown SnoHOMish.
Oh, yeah. No, that's pretty easy. I bought my house in 2020. And so 2021 was like maybe my favorite year ever. And that was the year that I was first time homeowner and got into gardening. And I don't know anything about gardening, just that I like it. and my mom and my brother, my grandma, they're all avid gardeners. And so I just remember that was the most magical time of my entire life, was just spending time in my front yard, gardening and talking to, and I'm not even kidding, about 20 people would just walk by Avenue A because, it's...
That was a big walking year. Everyone was just outside walking.
Yeah. And it was just the people I would meet and the stories I would hear and, oh, tell me about your house, or what year is that? And, that's my perfect day. That is all I want to do in my life, is just be outside in my garden, talking to my neighbors and meeting new people and all the neighborhood cats. We have quite a few of them. They come and go.
There are a lot of cats in the downtown. Oh my gosh, yes.
I've never seen one.
What? There's so many. They're everywhere.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah. They all have names and
When we first moved here, we had a cat. Rest in peace, Zeus. He was so cute. He was this little black and white guy. And we were like, he's very adventurous and wanted to be outside all the time, which was fine. But we were nervous in this new space. And our street, people kind of use as a cut through.
Yeah.
And they kind of bomb down it.
Yeah.
So I was always afraid that he was going to get hurt. And sometimes he'd be like laying in the middle of the street. It's like, dude, what are you doing?
It's like, try me.
But then we would go up the street towards the high school. And there was this other cat that was like his twin. And we'd be like, Zeus, what are you doing over here?
Yeah.
And we would like, go chase after this cat,
And they're like,
realizing
nope.
it's not our cat.
It's not your cat.
There are so many cats in downtown
So
Snohomish.
that
like
makes
it's a whole village.
That makes so much sense because up Avenue, so this is north of 2nd, is it E or F? There's a house that has this big handwritten sign that says slow cats crossing.
Oh, yeah.
I believe
It's on 2nd and like J.
Okay, is it
It's
that
a little
far
bit.
down?
It's a little bit further
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
Yeah, but I know exactly what house
But,
you're talking
like
about.
whenever I drive down 2nd, sometimes the sign will be like further out on the sidewalk. Sometimes it'll be in their yard, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
But now it makes sense if there's like
we're
a
very
cat
serious about
community.
No, it is, and there's communal cats. When I
Oh
moved
my
in,
gosh.
I had these 2 kitties. They're kind of skittish, but they tried to like come into my house. So
Oh
I'm like,
my
oh my
gosh.
gosh, were they left behind? And turns out they're actually the neighbors across the street, but we all feed them. They slept on everybody's porch. And because my house was a duplex, I guess they kept like the foyer door open
Okay.
all the time. And so the kitties would sleep in there, which kind of explains the smell. When I first left the house.
the kitty smell.
And their comfort level of
Yeah,
wanting to
yeah.
come into my house. But they'd sleep on my back deck all summer,
Oh
and
my
they would just
gosh.
kind of migrate. And
Yeah.
you can't get too close to them, but
Yeah.
they ruled the neighborhood basically.
I feel like that's a story on its own. We could start up at like an Instagram account that's like
My
cats
brother
of
and I
Snohomish.
talked
I
about the
would
window
follow
cats
that.
of Snohomish, porch cats of Snohomish. We've thought this through, actually. We haven't actually, executed yet, but
I would
So just
100%
wait,
patron
everyone.
that.
Yeah,
Yes.
that is awesome.
Well, let's circle back. So we talked about the neighboring, talking to your neighbors, gardening, the cats. What else would be involved in your beautiful day?
Oh gosh, I think just getting outside Avenue A a little bit, walking down to First Street. I'm very blessed. I have an incredible view of the whole valley and the Snohomish
Nice.
River at the base of Mount Rainier.
Mhm.
I see,
Isn't that
I can hear
gorgeous?
the pier shooters coming down. I can hear them
Yeah.
screaming on the way down, and the train going through. That was actually the first thing I saw when I toured my house. It was
Mhm.
October, but their parachuters were coming down, and that was the moment that sold us, was just that whole view of the valley. Because I grew up on Dutch Hill with that view, and so I think just even standing on the street, walking down to First Street, and seeing the river and the old bridge and everything, just in getting some ice cream or some coffee or something, just being on First Street. I think my favorite days, were I'd be outside gardening, and all of a sudden, I hear these little voices, and I turn around, and it's my brother and my nephews and niece in the wagon passing through.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, let me go lock my door real quick, and I'd hop on their walk, and we'd go down First Street, we come up D, and then that's about where we split off, and go back to our
Yeah,
houses.
halfway
And
point.
so that's my absolute favorite thing about living in Snohomish is all I do is look out my window sometimes, and there's my family.
Yeah,
I love that.
Just outside my house. So yeah, it's very magical.
I love hearing how much it's endearing,
Yeah.
that just like you have this strong connection here, not just with your family, which is a huge blessing that you can live in the same community in the same neighborhood,
Yeah.
as your family,
Yeah.
and hear how connected you are to them, but also just kind of, you just are in love with Snohomish.
Mhm.
I am.
I really appreciate that.
I
that
always
you just
have been.
inherently just being here is a great day for you. Because
Yeah, every day.
Yeah, I love
Trying
that.
to figure out how I can work from home every day. I just
Right?
like being in my house. I like
Aren't
being
we
near my
all?
neighbors. Yeah.
That's so great. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for giving us your time
Yeah.
later
Thanks
in
for
your
having
evening
me.
tonight. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And sharing all of the wonderful stuff that is going on with the Historical Society. And I'm hoping, a lot more people will get involved and just rejuvenate the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
we
gonna
were
be a
so
really big
excited.
year.
I was super excited when I met you, and I shared it with the whole board. I'm like,
I
guess
saw the
what?
website
There's
and I was
someone
like,
new coming
oh my
to
God.
the Historical Society. And
No, there's a lot going on. And I think there's a lot of opportunities to connect, different organizations with each
Yeah.
other. And I'm extremely excited about the position and extremely excited to just meet more people and get more
Yeah.
involved and let people know kind of what we're doing. So
Yeah.
well,
We're
that's
excited
wonderful.
to see what all you can do this year.
Absolutely. And we're here to support you. And
Yeah.
that's one thing that's so great about Snohomish is all of the networking between the different nonprofits. And
Mhm.
we all just want to keep supporting the work because everybody just wants Snohomish to keep being the
Yeah.
great place that it is.
Yeah.
And
We love it
investing in
here.
that. So yeah. All right. Well, thanks again. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of SnoHOMish Storytellers.
Keep writing those stories, and we will see you next time. Bye.
SnoHOMish Storytellers, brought to you by the Historic Downtown SnoHOMish Association, produced by Red Trucks.